Hello, BookTube, and welcome to another edition of Book to Film. And this week is Burnt Offerings by Robert Marasco, published in 1973, and uh, Dan Curtis's direction of Burnt Offerings from 1976, starring Karen Black, Betty Davis, and Oliver Reed, and Burgess Meredith, Dub Taylor as extras, and as well. Now, it's a horror film, sort of a haunted house type film, or is it haunted, or is there something else going on? Well, that's part of the mystery of it. But this here was published. This edition here is 2015 by Valancourt Books, who do reprints of Gothic and other sort of, they call almost neglected fiction. They do a lot of interesting stuff. There's an introduction by Stephen Graham Jones. I've never heard of him, and I've been told, I haven't looked him up, but I'm told he's a contemporary horror writer. And the introduction, which is just less than 3 pages long, is fabulous. I want to read you the bit of the beginning and the end. You don't just live through a haunted house novel, you learn from it. The Haunting of Hill House, The Shining, The House, Lunar Park, all of them whisper to you in the best and the worst possible way. Robert Marasco's Burnt Offerings is part of that evil chorus. It keeps me safe. Every time I move, every time I'm checking out the next new place, I'm taking a lot more into consideration than the wiring and the paint, or which direction the morning sun comes in. Drive by the house you're interested in at night, I say. Watch the windows. See if anybody's waiting for you there, and then drive home with the dome light on, and check that back seat as often as you can. It won't be often enough. And that's healthy. That's good. That's right. And then he ends it. He goes into sort of a little sort of overview of ghost films and horror in print. And then he says, with this new edition, the best haunted house novels, they leave you walking those long dark hallways alone. They leave you pretty sure you just heard a chair scrape in the other room, the room you know is empty. The best haunted house novels, they grow their walls up around you. They give you a place to live, if you dare. Open this book and step in. We haven't left the lights on for you. Stephen Graham Jones, December 2014. That I thought was just fabulous. That, it, like, to me, this book had to live up to that. It's sort of it's a great story. Well, we'll get to that. It's basically a Queens family that lives in Queens, New York, and it's summer coming up. The father, Ben, is a teacher at a high school, so they've got summer vacation going. But they show their life in a little apartment in Queens, and I'm assuming it's set in the 70s, which New York in the 70s wasn't the greatest. There was lots of unrest and poverty still. And you see that in the streets, and his frustration with other neighbors, and neighbors frustrated with him and finding parking place. He's tired of this, and so is his wife, and the heat that comes in their small apartment. And they have an 8-year-old boy, Davy. So she longs and they long to get away, but whether they can afford something is another question. And she spends her time, she always wanting something more, and she collects uh, things, furniture, antique type of furniture, and she prizes things a lot, and that comes into what happens later. But she sees an ad in the paper for a house during the summer out in the country, not too far from New York, and to the right person. And it doesn't say the amount, so they go out and take a look at it, and they meet. It's a bit run down, and they meet the eccentric owners, a brother and sister, the Allardyces, and they're sort of handyman. They're a bit creepy, a bit strange, but they say that they can have, basically for 2 months, they can have the place for $900, and that's a steal. It's a 30-room house, and so they go away, think about it, and then decide to take it. So then they show up at the beginning of July, and they're going to have it till Labor Day weekend. And they show up, but the all Allardyces are away. There was one catch to all this. Their mother, who lives in a small apartment up in the attic, needs to be brought food 3 times a day. She doesn't leave her little bedroom or sitting room. And Marion says yes, she can do this. So he thinks Ben thinks it's a bit of an inconvenience, but if Marion wants to do it, he'll let her do it. So they move in. The Allardyces had to leave. A note said left them all the keys and instructions and lots of food for the time there, and said, use it. So the place is dusty, dirty. It's a bit run down, as I say, and so Marion goes and starts cleaning it up, and she gets very attached to things, and it's like quite long descriptions of the type of furniture, like Chippendale and the antiques, and she's slowly being enticed by the house in more ways than one, and it becomes affecting her, but she cleans, um, and something else sort of happens that she never sees Mrs. Allardyce up in the room. She takes food, and most of the time the food's not eaten. She hears a noise, like a humming sound coming from the room. She knocks, she gets no answer, but she continues to do this. Ben goes out. They also have brought his aunt Elizabeth along. She They have a good relationship with her, so they're giving her a bit of a vacation as well. And he fixes up the pool. He does some yard work, and he starts getting affected by the house as well. Like, the house has a strange effect on it, and she wants things. Mary and his wife wants things only a certain way. In the rooms and all the clocks, but things are sort of getting cleared up too quickly, and they're becoming tired, and as I say, they're affecting him. And after they get the pool set up, he starts being, having roughhouse with his son, a little too rough, and he almost as if he's possessed. Well, maybe he is. Uh, he sort of is estranged a bit by his son at that point, because he was quite rough and could have hurt him. And they find strange things around, like they find a tricycle that seems to have dried blood on it, stuck in the vines. A pair of glasses, that one of the glasses has a hole, the lens has a hole in it. Very, very, very odd things. And as I say, he's being affected by this, and you find out in the course of things that he has had a mental breakdown at some point, and he keeps having a dream, about from childhood that affects him very, very much so, and the dreams are starting to come back, and he feels because of what he did to his son that he's going to have another nervous breakdown, and he wants to leave, but she doesn't, and so they stay there, and she gets more and more enticed by the house, and Aunt Elizabeth, who is fairly elderly in her 70s, and she dies. But as she dies, uh, the house becomes, the flowers in the greenhouse bloom, and it becomes cleaner. And after, but especially after the pool incident, the pool becomes clean, but Marion takes credit for this, that she has been cleaning. And but when Elizabeth dies, like, he really does want to leave. They couldn't get a hold of the doctor, but she is able to. The doctor couldn't find the place, so he's late there, and she dies, as I say. And he still sort of is, he's being very affected by the house. And Marion starts turning gray. Her hair starts turning gray, but she's becoming more and more attached to the house and a little divorced from her family. And that just continues and continues, until sort of Ben almost becomes catatonic, and it goes sort of to a head where the house sort of starts shedding its skin, in a sense, with new skin, and uh, he sees this, and his son almost dies because of gas heater is left on in his room. And yeah, and it just progresses from there, where the ending is a little open ended, a little bit, but it's pretty clear, I think, what happens. Like, the house devours them, and like, it's a hungry house, and she becomes Marion after son drowns in the pool. Basically, that's what is alluded to, and Ben just dies of a hemorrhage, almost like blood coming out of his eyes, and the blood is sort of soaked into the around the pool, um, and everything is sort of blooming again, and she becomes the Mrs. Allardyce at the end. I'm sort of ruining the ending, but that's sort of the film as well. So we get to the film, the and it's a very, very good adaptation of the book. They do change things a little bit. They make the boy, rather than 8 years old, 13 years old. They change a few things around. With the story a little bit, and Dan Curtis, the director, in the there's two commentaries on here. There's Dan Curtis, the director, and William F. Nolan, who co-wrote the screenplay with Dan Curtis, and Karen Black, the actress in the film, does commentary, and it's okay. But there's some interesting things, because Dan Curtis, remember, is reading the book and thought, "Oh, it's complete crap. The ending is just it's a crap ending. It's shit. It's he's using all these euphemisms, how bad it was." But then he finally decided to do this, and the author did do a screenplay, and they had the same ending, or no ending, as he calls it. Um, so he decided, with William F. Nolan, they rewrote the script, and what he says, put an ending in. He just made it more explicit. That's all he did. But anyway, he makes the ending a little more explicit, and the way the Ben dies, and the way the Davy dies, is very different in the film. It's more dramatic and more shocking in many ways. And she becomes Mrs. Allardyce, and the brother and sister come back, and they say, "Mother's back," and everything is, pristine again for the house. It's renewed because it is fed on this family. But yeah, it's a really good adaptation. I thought of the book, and the book, as just going back to the book, the introduction really, I really loved that introduction, the beginning and the ending of it. So I was expecting a little more and something in the style of writing. The story is great. I really liked the story because it was a really sort of real haunted. It wasn't somebody else doing something like a lot of horrors, or at least films, because I was coming to it from the film, and it was like real. This is really happening, whether it's a ghost or some other entity or whatever. It's not really explained, but it's like a haunted house. So, and a real haunted house. And the style of writing I thought was just fine. There was nothing great about it. It's the story that's really good. But I was really hoping for something a little step above, and there was a couple of things that annoyed me personally, and I think that was just me, because every so often when Ben talks, he would refer, like, he would end his sentence, and sometimes not just short sentences, sometimes long, but not continuously, to his wife, and he'd say, "Babe." And all I could think of every time I heard that was two things: um, Sonny and Cher, and Babe the pig. But that was me, and that was I found it annoying. But then another thing he did too was huh, and it not consistently, and not in places where you'd expect it. It just, those two things annoyed me in the dialogue. But that was me. But it's a good story. Like, don't get me wrong, but there was nothing special about the way it was told, I didn't think, or the style. The film, though, is very clear. It's very concise. Dan Curtis, this is, I don't know how many films he'd made already. Up to this time, he actually worked on Dark Shadows, the gothic sort of soap opera, in the late '60s. And William F. Nolan was an author. He actually novelized Logan's Runs, um, the film, and wrote a number of sequels to it, a whole bunch, about seven or eight Logan's Run novels, and. Uh, the acting was fabulous. The child, Lee, what is it? Lee, is it Lee Montgomery? Um, just try to, yeah, Lee Montgomery was really good as a child too. Oliver Reed was great, and Betty Davis. It was lovely to see Betty Davis. Betty Davis is kind of strange for me, because I liked her when she was younger, but then it was like, when she became Betty Davis, I didn't really care for her that much. But then I liked her in her old age, and in this film was really good. I think it was like in the '70s, as she was doing things in After, that I really enjoyed her, and she's very creepy in this too. She's quite creepy, and she's got, like, there's a cigarette stuck to her finger and her lips, like, constantly, and she did really well with this. It's just, like, to me, it's there's not too many haunted house or horror films that I really like. uh, there's some that I enjoy, and I enjoy the '40s and '50s ones, that are fake horror, ones, that, like, haunted house type things that turn out to be a person. I like the ones that are real, that well, within the believability of the story, and there were a few in the '70s that did, and this was one of them. And I was glad that I sort of rediscovered it, because I completely forgot about this film. I knew there was another one, but I could never think of what it was. And then when I saw this listed for sale, and I go, yes, I think that's it. It was sort of like with the Uninvited. It was something that twigged in my mind, and then I remembered it, and I really enjoyed it. Um, but yeah, and there's another commentary on here as well, with Richard Harlan Smith, and he's really good in many ways. He not only talks about the production of the film, but he sets the film in its context of horror, gothic horror, because there's many gothic elements in this as well. But within film, and he goes back to the silent films like The Cat and the Canary, and other sort of haunted house films, and the fake ones that aren't really haunted. They're a criminal or something doing something, or trying to swindle somebody out of their inheritance. And but he sets this in context with that, and with horror in general, and it's really really good. And I was really surprised because generally, well, I do like commentaries, but I generally find the commentaries of the directors and writers and actors aren't that good. And there was some good bits in here with them. Their patter back and forth, like Karen Black talking about when she's in the pool with Oliver Reed, and Oliver Reed kept trying to move her so her back is to the camera, and he because he wanted to be seen and not her, and she says, can you stop this, and let me be seen by the camera. And he got in a real huff apparently, and went for a long walk. And apparently there was sort of he didn't get along with with Betty Davis that well, but their chemistry on screen was really really good. And they added something too. They added the chauffeur in there, and I can't not mention the chauffeur. I forget the guy's name. Uh, no, I don't see his name on here. I forgot his name, but he is creepy as hell, and the smile, just tall and skinny. He is just extremely creepy, and apparently it really worked for audiences where they would scream at the don't go back into the house and stuff like that. Apparently, at the first screenings of it. And it's pretty horrifying the way it ends, where instead of him Benji dying sort of at the pool, in a catatonic state, he what is it, defenestrates himself. He goes out the window and smashes down onto the car while his son's inside. It's quite horrific scene, and unexpected in some ways too. When you're first seeing it, there's things in here you don't expect, um, and he creeps it up like it's creepy, but it also creeps up on you because you're wondering, well, why don't they leave the house? And they talk about that, and it's because it's a slow takeover. It's a very slow thing, and by the time they realize there's a problem, they can't leave. She won't leave, and it's just the house has them. And yeah, it's just a great film. Um, and I hope to do more horror films in the future. But again, there's not a whole lot that I like, enough that I would want to read the book. But whenever I can find some, I will. And next week, for a book to film, will be Dashiell Hammett's The Glass Key. This is a nice vintage. Is it vintage? Um, oh no, it's Orion fiction, but I really like the cover. This is similar to the Maltese Falcon. So we'll be doing that next week, or I will be. And the film, The Glass Key, with Veronica Lake, Alan Ladd, and um, Brian Don Levy. It's Stuart Hessler direction, based on The Glass Key by Dashiell Hammett. So anyway, what are your favorite? Like, have you seen this film? What do you think of it, or the book? And what are your favorite horror films that are actual supernatural horror? Like, I don't mean slasher type things, but supernatural horror films. I'd love to hear. Do let me know in the comments, because it'd be nice to find something that I'm not aware of. preferably older ones, but even new ones that are good, that are based on books. But anyway, take care, book two. We'll see you next time.